I think we're on live. So we are with, do you go by Lou? Do people call you Lou?
Louis. When I grew up, it was Louis, but it's Lou Grasso, I think.
Lou Grasso. We're with Lou Grasso.
Okay.
And you guys are going to be excited to see the work. I mean, I'm looking at a lot of work right now. You're going to be really excited to see the work. I'm excited to hear the story and to take maybe kind of like a time travel,
Okay.
you know, back to where you began and where you're at now.
Well, I grew up in Collinwood, the Collinwood area, and before that was Glenville, but we moved to Collinwood when I was about 8 years old and had an art teacher early on, and she encouraged me. I was already doing it. My mother would take me to the museum, always encouraging art. And so the art was always in our family and music. My sister's a violinist. And I'm trying to think, George Roby was my first art teacher that I remember at Collinwood, who was a tremendous artist in the Cleveland area. And he passed away a few years ago. And it was his first year teaching. And he was such a cool young guy. I was 10 years younger than him. I thought, why, cool people can do artwork, you know? And so that was my first encouragement, real encouragement that art could be a career. And he was that guy. He probably doesn't know that and never knew it.
Oh, my goodness.
But because I never had a chance to tell him. I told his wife that. So I hope, because she actually taught at one of the classes I taught at. And I'm sure she shared that
Just share that message with you.
Yeah, I'm hoping so.
I'll tell you what, do me a favor. Or give a real quick teaser on this wall. Really quick teaser on this wall, because people are going to say, so like, what are we talking about? This is just a little piece of what we're going to be talking about tonight.
Yeah, this is one of my grandsons when he was 3 years old. He had very haughty expression usually. This is when he was about, I suppose, 11 years older.
Quick pass by that one just for the sake of...
Mm-hmm. And these pastels are probably in your way. This is my mother from life and from photo. These are life studies. These are just life studies in oil. Those others were acrylic. These are acrylic. I love gorillas. And this is Makolo from our zoo, who's still alive. Two others that I painted have passed. And Bebop, and I'm trying to remember the last one. Just an illustration that I did. It's supposedly for National Geographic, but I did it for Syracuse. It was an art program, and it was just kind of fun. Most of these for Northern Ohio Illustrators Society, which many of us were in, that prior to Pretentious Portrait Artists, were done for shows for Northern Ohio Illustrator Society, and they won awards. These two first place, that was the first place. It was just, you know, a great thing to do. It's a wonderful people, and the same people, many of the same people that were there are now with the Pretentious group.
Oh my gosh.
So it's art is, and in Cleveland, it's the community is spread around, but the people are close.
Yeah.
So we all know one another. So.
Yeah.
Anyway,
what a great teaser. So we just wanted to give you a little taste of what we're going to be talking about here over the next, 45 minutes, hour. But before we jump into digging deeper into Lou's journey, we want to give away a few things from 2 weeks ago. If you were with us 2 weeks ago, we were able to interview, we're out and doing a sourdough, the art of sourdough.
Yeah.
With Ellen from Triskel Bakery. And we also, just the day before, were with Lynn Marie, and she started the Body Positivity Drawing Group on every other Monday night over in the Parma area. And so we interviewed two people in the same week. So we got two winners to pick.
Cool.
And so let's start with Lynn. I actually, you draw one of those names out of this one. So whoever's name you're drawing, you're going to get a print of her work her work of Billie Eilish.
Oh, great! Do I read this out?
Yeah,
Looks
can you
like
read it?
Catherine Mobin.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Catherine Mabin.
Mabin.
So Catherine, thank you for sharing that interview. Well, I'm going to connect with you, and we'll get you that print from Lynn. And then we had one other giveaway, and this was for one winner to bring two people to one of Alan's sourdough. I think he's the sourdough. It might be croissants. He does a whole bunch of different things, but whoever wins this one is going to be 2 seats at Trisco Bakery's one of his classes.
Kirk Maynard.
Kirk Maynard. Kirk, congratulations. Kirk is a puppeteer.
Oh, really?
Yeah, really phenomenal puppeteer. And well, I don't know that I ever saw Kurt when I did his interview. I saw his puppets, and so I was interviewing puppets. I felt like Jim Henson, but it was great. So Kurt, thank you, and certainly thank you, Lynn and Alan, for great interviews. But we're here to talk to Lou. But before we jump in, we're going to talk about a couple times. You were saying that you really enjoy doing gorillas.
Yes.
If somebody shares this video and their name is drawn, they're going to get one of your gorillas.
You're going to get a gorilla drawing.
Do we have one that we could kind of show? What?
Yeah, it'll be any one of these. And I'm not sure yet. That's Dan Fry, good friend of all of ours. Probably one this, or possibly this one. Or I also love this.
Yeah.
I just, he was, he's both in the cage, and he's contemplating that big hand. So I don't know.
I'll tell you what. Are you okay with giving away this one?
Yes.
So if you share this video and your name is drawn, next week we'll draw the winner. And if you happen to be a winner, you get an original piece of artwork.
Yes, and this was done at the Cleveland Zoo with Northern Ohio Illustrators. So we used to do a zoo day, and so we'd sit there and sketch and draw. And I would take a mental picture and a photograph, and so I could sit down because he would move. Yeah. But he would stay, and this is Mokolo again. He would stay in that position for quite some time, down like this and just wait. And so you could get good photography. You could even do the quick sketch. He was just amazing. So he's still around, which I love.
Did you know how old that gorilla is? Ish?
Oh, he's in his 40s or possibly maybe 50 now, I think. I believe. He fathered don't quote me on that one, sorry, but I think in the 40s. He fathered the last two, the babies, or one of the last two. The mother is not taking care of the baby. She wasn't used to it, but they found a surrogate.
I heard about that surrogate.
Anyway, it's just amazing.
It is.
So I love these things. I mean, I didn't show you this, but
yeah, show us.
Well, I'm going to have to pull this off the wall. This is Mokolo.
What?
And
oh my goodness.
And I loved them so much. I did a lot of these oversized things. This was in the Gates Mills show, but only I was a jurist, so they liked it. And
what is it? I mean,
this is acrylic.
Yeah. So, what is it about gorillas that keeps you going back to them?
The empathy, the faces, their gestures, everything about them is like they're only a half a chromosome away from us, or chimpanzees are half a chromosome. I don't know if the gorilla's real close to. And I just, you feel for them, these animals. And yet, their faces do change. They can express themselves, although they don't have the same muscle. We have a billion muscles over here. There's Bebop, who was. It
almost feels like we're in a museum here. This is so much great work.
Oh, this isn't Bebop. This is my grandson. But this is Bebop, and he died during the surgery. But he had I think it was a cancer that they were doing the surgery, and he died during the surgery. Again, I can't be quoted because I just read most of it. But Bebop, this was a lot of fun. He's just a brilliant animal. But you see the difference in the two.
Oh yeah,
I mean these are two different guys.
Two different, two different animals,
and the females all different. But what fascinates me is that they are human, and what fascinates me, we're gorillas too. We're part of the animal world. So
and the expression and the feeling and the empathy, that we often see in these animals.
The strength.
Oh yeah,
and they're fierce, but they're not fierce. A chimpanzee is far fiercer. Anyway, whatever.
Yeah. Oh my goodness,
they're all brilliant. But
so where do we start? Do you want to? You've been an artist for just a bit of time, right?
Yeah, probably 60 years. I'm really old. When I start to look back on it, I went to after graduating. I didn't graduate from college. We moved out here to Mayfield, and I had Lou Penfield was my art teacher there, who was a true mentor and a great friend. And he actually talked my parents out of signing for me to go to the service I was going to go a year early and finish my high school in the service. And I thought that'd be a good thing to do. And my father was into it. My mother wasn't, but he said he would do it. Lou Penfield, he was 6'8", this teacher.
Who's your art teacher?
Yes, 6'8". My mother was about 4'11". She said she was 5 feet. Anyway, he went to the house, stood over, hovered over my mother, said, "Do not sign. That kid is an artist, and I'm going to kick his butt and make sure that he graduates with decent grades so he'll get into an art school."
Art school.
Well, I did. And he did kick my butt. I got all the grades I was supposed to. I built a portfolio, and I met Bill Whitsitt at Cooper School of Art, and they gave me a scholarship as long as I worked hard. And from the first time in my life, I was getting A's all the time. I said, well, this is great. And so that was the start of it. And Cooper School was a wonderful school for commercial artists, we would say then. The applied arts, I suppose, is better said. But we called it commercial art at the time, and we all learned how to draw. And if you could draw, this is the analog world, this is not the digital world. If you could draw, you could get work. And if you could draw the human figure or a face, you were assured of getting work in the little studios in town and so on. So after I graduated Cooper, I wound up not going to the military. Thought I was going, but it never happened. And and you couldn't get a job, by the way, until you did your military experience during the late 60s. But it turned out I had terrible ulcers, and they said, "No, we don't want you." It's okay. So I quit my railroad job. I worked on the Collinwood yards, and that's why you see trains around here.
Yeah.
I quit that job. I was a brakeman, which was terrible. I met people that had 3 fingers on one hand and so on. It was just, I said, maybe I don't want to be a railroader. And I quit my construction job, and I went back down to Cooper for a visit. And Anthony Shepis, one of the greats of Cleveland artists, and he taught also at the CIA. And he saw me kicking around the floor, and I was just hanging around. He said, "You need a job, don't you?" Well, yeah. And sure enough, and he told me about 2 jobs, Penton, which I wound up in, and a studio job. He said, "Take the studio job. It pays $400 a month. And the other one, it's not as good, but you'll learn a lot as far as pay." And it paid $300. So I remember I got the job immediately, and it was really not, to be a keyline paste up in those days. It was all production art. And there's an art to that, too, even though it was considered production. I did this, so I get this job, and my mother, the same 4'11" woman.
Yeah.
I had a white shirt and tie, because in those days, women wore dresses. I had to wear a white shirt, tie, even though you're working in an apartment. And I'm walking out of the house, and my mother's crying, typical Italian woman. And she said, "Oh my God, you've made it." So I went from $300 a week to $300 a month. I said, I made what? At any rate, but Penton was my first experience with art, and it became my last experience in the work world. I freelanced a whole lot, you can tell in here. And so from Penton, I did all these mechanical things, and they moved me on to, we used to use hot type in those. You want to hear that stuff?
I haven't, and I'm sure that there's a number of people here. I know there's a lot of artists in 287 who went to the Cooper School of Art. We know it's no longer here because I've interviewed a few folks. But tell us what hot type is.
Well, hot type was, hot lead type was the typists. In our case at Penton, we had a printing plant in Berea, and the typists that handled the hot type machines were out by the printing plant. We would, as art editors and editors feeding us copy, we would send the copy to the typesetters, typewriter copy. We tried to do them column by column, so that we had a certain leading and certain size of the columns. They would go out to the typesetters, and this hot type, they're machines that sound like a typewriter. Remember the old typewriters? Tick, tick. Only they're about 3 times as loud. Clong, clong, clong. And the lead would come through the system and pound the letters through the lead, so that you would get, that's where you hit the terms of leading and so on. And you would get these bars of type that would be coordinated to like a 13 pica column or 20 pica, whatever it was going to be. And then the hot type would be they would print galleys, and so that was considered still hot type. So the galleys we would get as keyliners, we would get 3 galleys for each segment, or whatever you want to call it, not a full page. It might have taken like 8 galleys or 20 galleys to do a story, but the galleys would come into a keyline department. The galleys would have to be sprayed because this is hot type, or it's the ink is still wet. So we would spray them with spray fixative. We'd be in a room of spray fixative. You couldn't see the other person, and it said on the jar that this would cause some kind of damage. And I once told my first boss, I said, "So I could be damaged if I use too much." He said, "You know what? Why don't you go outside?" And he told me that. I said, "And spray." I said, "Oh, that'll be good." He said, "But don't come back." And I said, so this is pre-OSHA, So
and to think about what went in to creting work, which today is just your keyboard, right?
Oh, you had our freelance. If I had taken the other job, I'd have worked for a small studio, and the bigger studios, full service studios, did type. They would buy their type from the outside, but they did the type. The writers would prepare for for the printers, or excuse me, for the typesetters. But they would do photography. They would have illustrators. They would do all the production work I talked about. Flapping all the way down to flapping. Putting the overlays on things so that the artwork looked clean. So a full service studio could supply many of these things, but they still had to, like I say, go to a typesetter. They might have to go to a what do they call those? I forgot what we called those darn things. When you wanted to get a halftone, there were little blocks and things. So if you wanted halftones, so this little shop still needed all these other services, and then pre-production and so on. Agencies would have in-house art directors who, in those days, most all art directors could draw, because drawing it can express yourself so well, and helps a client to understand. And those drawings they might hire an illustrator, so they would give that drawing to an illustrator. They would hire again a copywriter, so the copywriter has to come in. They have to buy their type from the outside, their headline type. So all this stuff was a system. And I did a thesis when I went back to Syracuse. I did graduate work at Syracuse. It was about concerned with illustration, but it was illustration and design. And what's so nice about that is many of the people, because I went in my late 40s, many of these people were children of 30, 25, and they didn't know any of the stuff. And it's just like to communicate all this and how much harder it was back then. But even 30 years ago, it was still somewhat the same deal. You were still buying photography from the outside. You're buying illustration on the outside. And so when I was interviewing people for the thesis, several said, well, we never called it a system, but it was a system. And if you got into a satellite and looked down, all these, in Cleveland, all of these people are interwoven, and they're talking to one another. And it's a really cumbersome way, by today's standards, because everything digital, you have one person sitting, I used to use Cork Express, so it's probably InDesign. One person sitting there orchestrating the entire thing. Unfortunately, you don't even, many times don't even need the artist. I mean, you need an artist to do the design of the publication. You want high-end looking stuff. Yeah. But you have people, self-publishing, type it away. And all of that stuff used to take hundreds of people for one publication, but at Penton I learned all of that. We did a lot of like I say, we were like pre-press. We would do overlays. I think people, if anybody's watching out there, we used to use amberlith overlays. And
do you have a couple examples of some of the?
I don't have the mechanical stuff anymore.
Do you have any of the print material?
Oh, I have print.
Yeah, why don't you show us a couple of that, because I think that'll.
I'm going to walk right.
Yeah, help us.
I'm hoping we find. Well, these are some magazine covers that I did for Penton, and I guess I could speak a little bit about printing through this. They liked it's a very conservative company. They thought artwork as being Norman Rockwell, and
Yeah.
so I would try to do something that
They had that feel.
lean that way. But something like this, I wish I had one of the overlays. Once you did a painting, this is an acrylic painting. Once you did a painting, it had to be scanned, and in those days, flatbed, there was no roller scanners or anything, and so it would go to a separator, and the separator would photograph the painting and pull out CMYK, yellow, magenta, cyan, and black, and pull out. And in this paint, I used to have overlays that. But I don't have
They
them
showed you
anymore.
something, yeah, and I get it. I mean, your description of it certainly helps us.
Are you getting
Yeah.
the feel of it?
Yeah.
So CMYK, then we would okay the darn thing. The negatives would go to a stripper pre-press, and then the stripper would strip in. We'd have the key line set up, and then we would put a position print of that cover, and then the overlay would be the type. There'd be another overlay of type for a headline, for the logo, and whatever.
Yeah.
And so the process again is cumbersome. But if this is how long ago I was. This is almost pre-computer. They were talking about new realism in computer graphics in 1978. I mean, I did this by hand, to give you an idea. And if by doing this by hand, these are overlays of color. And so we would take amberlith, and it's a ruby lith, I think, but amberlith was the better. We would take amberlith, which is this membrane. It's kind of an orangish red, so the camera couldn't see behind that amberlith. So you would cut amberlith, and then you peel back what wasn't necessary for the illustration, and then the camera would not see that part, but it would see the open part that you wanted to use. And so in this case, we'd have to do the choking and the traps, meeting all the colors together, because the overlays, the amberlith overlays, would have to be turned into negatives, and the choking and the traps had to be just right. Although one printer told me, he says, we take the artist's stuff and throw it away, and that one of the strippers is, and then we redo them because artists don't do it. And I sent him a piece that I did this is a brag, of concentric circles. It was for a machine design reference issue on bearings, and there were all these little circles and circles within circles within circles. And I did it with all these, because I was taught well. I mean, these guys were better than me that taught me, and but we would have to use X-Acto blades on compasses and even on French curves, and you have to cut all those darn things and do all the dropouts. And this printer said, we use yours. And I was like, I'm walking around there.
Pull up your chest.
Yes, it was because artists were not considered pre-press by. We had a production club here in Cleveland, then we had art club, CSCA, and and they always seemed to be separate. And I had to do talks way back then because I became an art director in the company. And so I remember going to the production club, and I opened up with, artists are production people. And I mean, 100 people in that room, boo, And I said, well, let me explain. And then we started joking and talking about pre-press and what, and we knew what pre-press was. And the production people, in those days, the silos were, in building silos, not let alone within your own company.
Yeah.
But you find that the people that you work with, if you are not communicating with them and telling what you are and being a snob about what you're doing, you find that people are at odds. But once you start talking and they say, oh no, we're the same, we're part of the same process. At Penton, I learned to really respect engineers because I had engineering books. Of course, we had a lot of food books. I love restaurants and hospitals, but accountants, the creativity with all these different people, once you start communicating what it is that you do and what is it, you meld and you bring people together and you process it together. And I think what helped me as an art director was doing the freelance work, because you had to communicate with an illustrator. I would buy illustration, even though I did my own. A typesetter on computer, a pre-press. We had such a great printing area in Cleveland, learning what printers did,
Yeah,
and being one of the guys, as opposed to let's get it. Art directors, many of them, designers, notorious to before you can print that, you're going to have to change, and the printer and the art directors many times were at odds. I never played it that way because it didn't work.
Yeah.
It's just like, why have this tension? And so communication, I learned to communicate a lot more, I believe. Well, maybe it was the same thing. Working at a company like Penton, which was great. I mean, great management. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, you said Penton was your first and your last.
Well, yeah.
So you spent a good deal of time there, right?
I spent 35 years. I was, everybody knew this. I quit many times.
Okay.
And we had a really progressive, not politically necessarily, but a progressive president. And whenever he heard I shouldn't, if he thought I was not doing well, he would come down and talk to me. And so next thing you know, talk me back in. And it wasn't only my art director at the time, who I really liked. He was a tough guy, but he stood by me. But it was really the upper management that kept me there. And they didn't mind my freelance. I did a lot of work. I did their annual report, Society Bank, Society for Savings. So they knew what I was doing, but it was never competitive with a competitor. So I was learning both at Penton how to manage, I suppose. But management is nothing more than respecting another person. Who are you? What are you doing? Why, why do you feel that way? And so, and I mean, we didn't coddle people. I certainly wasn't coddled, but it just understood or tried to, so we made the best of those things. But having both a freelance business and I also did a lot of painting at night. I mean, all these are...
Yeah, take us there, because the freelance is... I'm assuming that most of this is your freelance work. Is that right?
Well, that would be... I think might be better if because I really don't hang that... let me see. Oh, this is George Blander. This wasn't freelance, but I love this. He sent me a letter. Remember, I don't know if you knew, this, the guy that was the greatest kicker of all time up until whatever, a few years back.
Yeah.
And I did this for Industry Week magazine, and see all that runniness. That was actually getting some attention. I did one of my father the same way. And a couple things got into print magazine with that style, and it was rare. At Penton, they liked the Norman Rockwell look of things, the realistic stuff. And I don't even know if the more realistic.
Oh, so this is the cover of that one piece, right?
They changed the headline on me, and which was terrible, because it said that such and such uncorked a gusher. I said, well, this is a gusher. I did an illustration on the inside of the book with the corner of the cob, spewing oil, and that would have been more appropriate for the cover. At the last minute, the editor changed the headline because it would have fit this better. It never fit, but the illustration did. But this isn't freelance. I'm trying to think of where. Oh gosh, I have drawers of freelance at different places. Oh, you know what? If you held that,
absolutely.
I thank you so much. This is a freelance. That got into print magazine.
Oh, nice.
It was a style. These are all posters for the food bank and the Cleveland Browns Party with a Purpose. These are posters. So you could call these freelance jobs.
Yeah.
And so I did that for a dozen or more years. So that,
I see the early 2000s on those, right?
Yes.
Is that right? The 2002, 3.
It goes all the way to, this is Lou Gross's year, the year he passed. Oh, what a great guy he was. He was always giving. And I got to know him, got to meet him, know him. And every year we had great conversations. He was a sweetheart of a person, big and tough, but just a warm human being. And so we did his shoes. Every year had added an olive.
An olive to the year, yeah.
So these olives were at the bottom. I just used that little print there. So that would be freelance. This is what some of the posters look like. But freelance falls in, this is a freelance job. the great Zingattis. I got to work with Denny as an art director, and this was the West Tech Terrorist, and the author Peter Jeddick. He's a Cleveland author, and it's just a lot of fun to do. And it's upside down. I'm sorry about that, but that would be a freelance job, and it was supposed to be what do you call it? Oh, anyway. This was a nice job. The Polar Express. Every year they do it. Where I have the kids on the train.
Yeah, down in the valley, right?
They go on there with their pajamas. Well, they couldn't use they didn't want to use the book. They wanted their own stuff, and they wanted to do these. How would you call these? Like posters of various segments of the book, maybe 6 or 7. That would be the opening, but they didn't want to use the original, book, and so they would have these posters, but they'd be on cloth. And when a certain part of the book came up, one of the elves would come walking down the train, and they used them up until 2 years ago. We're talking when I retired, it's about 18 years ago.
So 18,
they must have used it for 16 of those years.
Goodness.
And that was a freelance job. So intermixed freelance versus Penton, my own work, and these are New York City paintings.
So back in the day, I mean, you would carry around a portfolio like this, which I mean, could.
Oh, I'm happy you said that.
Yeah, because most people don't remember, right? Portfolios. I mean, you just pull out your phone.
No, we would do.
Look at these.
You would walk around with a black and white. It's usually a black portfolio, like one of these behind you. I don't know if there's one of these things, and you schlep your work. And I wouldn't make cold calls. I'd call, but I'd do it during my lunch hour. I'd go to I got to a point.
Yeah.
Where I was going to use technology. I'm not going to show you all these things, but back in the day, we would use slides.
So you went from
print
to slides. That was the next generation back then,
yes.
Right?
I mean, people were using slides when they would send their photography work in.
Yeah.
By the way, back in those days, we would call when the photographs came in, we'd call them photos. When the art came in, we would call them the art is coming in. And then when the digital world started, we started calling them images. And it dehumanized or de-artized our work. When we started calling it, when I started saying, did the images come in? It really saddened me. Yeah,
it felt
because we were losing that unique respect for art.
Yeah.
Anyway, I put these slides in a carousel. There's one in a box up there. And I go with my carousel, and you only get, 10 minutes with a person. Takes 2 minutes to set that up, set up my slides, boom, boom, and I'd get work. And I had enough, I wasn't arrogant, but I had enough.
You had enough confidence, right?
I guess,
show
or maybe innocence, Yeah. And I got work. And I would talk to friends who, because I was also hiring people at Penton, they would come in and say, how do you get this work? How did you get in there? And these were graduate of Kent State, graduate of the Institute. I thought, well, you just go get it. And these young people, I was just amazed by how talented they were. And I never thought anything, not only how talented they were, but how much confidence they had. And I said, well, why are they asking me? And then I started thinking, I guess it's hard to get work. And it is. And once I started thinking, gee, if it's hard to get work, maybe I can't get any more, But I kept, like I said, freelancing all the way through. But what I really liked doing was fine art. And so what I perceived as fine art, my own personal work, whatever. And I pointed over to that wall because I really loved like Lucian Freud. But I showed you a piece before, I never had the nerve to just let go and stop. I always had I got to prove that I can do this. Instead of just doing and just let it happen. And, and it doesn't matter if you sell it or not. That's why I love meeting your family and Tim Heron, the pretentious portrait artist, because I'm just doing this for myself now.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's not like I don't care what it looks like. I do care, but I can stop at any time I want. I don't have to make it for the client.
Take us there. Maybe take us there over, start with maybe this in-process drawing.
Well, this is Nicole. We had Nicole last week, last Friday night. And I already did 2 of her. She's a wonderful face. And I already done 2 of her. And I thought, well, I'm going to do a 3rd one because I knew you were coming. And so this would be probably maybe half hour into the work, maybe a little more than a half hour. So you start out, I'm only working from photos. I prefer working from life. Life is more meaningful to me because it's, even when I taught, I mean, we insist that everybody work from life. But if you work from life, you can learn how to leave the photo. You don't copy the photo.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've seen people copy photos to the nines, and that's a wonderful skill. And so I'm not denigrating that. But I like to draw and leave the photo and think about drawing around a person. And so even when I'm doing this, you see how flat a photograph is. And I did a printout of this from my computer. And but it's flat. A photograph is a flat image, and you're not seeing. I mean, wonderful photography, but you're really not seeing the true depth that may be there. So I like to start a drawing. Well, of course, I block it in. Everybody does that. And I think everybody knows about, the first line being the line of the face going from top. If she was going this way, that would be the line that way. So once you do that, perpendicular, that would be the eyes, the nose, and so on. And then you eventually make the silhouette. And then for my process, and most people do this, I look for the dark and light and start with the darks. And you can see that. And I was told by Bob Dacey, a wonderful illustrator, he said, if you really look at most faces, they're yellower at the top, pinker at the cheeks, pinker and red, and either green or blue at the bottom. And so that's a little formulaic. But if you look at, I mean, even, I know, red's good, but it's still yellower at the top.
Oh, yeah.
Peachier and so on. Now, Degas would do these images, with the lights coming from below, stage lights. Of course, that negates everything I just said.
Right.
But what doesn't negate is you really still have to look and see. At the end of the day, she, looking at this, it seems like very flat. I'll probably flatten out the tones, but you can see it started more yellowish, more peachy, a little more purpley. By the time this is done, it will be, like that, I would think. If I really spent time on it, it would be really finished, but I'm never going to do, as I said, I'm never going to do another one of these. I've turned down, this is a bit of a brag, I've turned down freelance for the last, including my family asking me, for the last 6 years. That's it, I'm done. Becky also reminded me, she says, you ever do another job? I'm walking out, because I was getting ill. I was working so much, night and day. Well, I had kids, so a lot of the motivation was money to work, but the art was not about money. So you did the drawing at night and what we're doing with the pretentious group for ourselves, and then you can bring that back to your labor, to the actual work. And frankly, most artists I know really put the same amount of respect and love into what they're doing commercially, even for someone else's need. A commercial artist is really fulfilling someone else's need, and a fine artist at the extremes, and a fine artist is doing whatever they want and somebody buys it. But I find that, Michelangelo was a commercial artist. I mean, that Pope was paying him. And, and even the Cleveland School, there used to seem like there was a division between and even at the CIA, that there was a division between illustration and fine art or gallery painting. There really isn't. I mean, it's one and the same. It's just your motivation's a little different. But you saw what Ben does. He paints for himself, and somebody purchases those paintings, and that's it might appear to be commercial, but he's doing it from his spirit. Yeah. If I was selling a piece of artwork to a person, let's say it was a portrait, some of those portraits that were private commissions, I'm doing that for them, but I'm giving them a portrait in the way I like to paint it. If I was doing commercial work, I told you sometimes at Penton, I'll do it more like Norman Rockwell. If I did something too runny, or I remember my boss, who was an art director, but he wasn't an artist, but he was communicating with the upstairs, which I eventually wound up being in that position. he called me in one day. He goes, you know, this, and he was a tough guy. I go, this runny stuff. No, I'm not saying that. You know, they really like you, but this runny stuff. You know, he's trying to tell me, pardon me, don't do it. Well, I did it anyway, you know, and it turned out they liked it. Yeah. I mean, if somebody hasn't experienced something, so I wasn't taking big risks, you know, they were still the person's face or whatever. And, you know, Peter, at the time I was doing stuff like that, Peter Max was around and people were more accepting of, oh, these crazy artists, but you know, that's the stuff that's happening, you know. So they did accept it a little more. Anyway, I'm running off.
Well, you know what, and I wanna tell you that as we're talking, I've been distracted by this portrait, and so just give me a quick update on.
This is Shiro. This is my oldest grandson, and this is on a blackboard, and I was experimenting and to see what would happen when normally. With the pastel, I always thought of working on a blackboard and pastel was kind of that corny stuff, you know.
Yeah,
and I thought, but and then I was watching, well, many people do it, and it's not corny. So I was just experimenting, and this to me is how I like to work, and where I would like to stop everything I'm doing. So I leave it out here, and he has a lot of empathy in his face. A lot of these are acrylic.
Yeah.
So it's the same person at different ages and different stages. So I'm just experimenting. That's all.
Yeah. Now you shared with me, you know, recently that you had taken hiatus.
Yes.
From work. What you have you want to share the reason the hiatus or what brought you back?
Well, I left Penton. I was teaching at CIA. Had classes there, and I had classes at Orange Art. And I actually got on the board. I was vice president at Orange Art, and I found myself being a manager again, though. But I loved it. They're wonderful people, wonderful board. But I was the dichotomy was hard to deny. I was teacher. It was just like at Penton. I'm both the director, but by this time not art director, but director in the company, and I'm still a painter. You know, so that doesn't fit. You know, it's still illustrated. Well, I was working at Orange. I was on the board, but I'm also a teacher. And I said, well, but they liked it. I liked it. It seemed to work. I loved doing it. So I did teaching. This is right after Penton. I still had quite a bit of freelance. Still feeling really good, making money. You know, you got to eat. You know, so I didn't retire, but I felt it. But I retired from Penton. I said, well, that's it. You know, Penton had all kinds of difficulties toward the end. There was 9/11 caused issues. The dot-com bust, trade shows went down. So Penton, there's still a Penton that exists, but it's part of a British conglomerate, and Penton still exists in Cleveland. They kept the name, the cachet in that industry, in the industrial books. Anyways, but I was done with all that. I'm really enjoying my life, painting, teaching, everything I want to do, and. One day, I got ill. Nothing's very seriously ill, but it was real hard for me to communicate. Hearing went, and there was this tinnitus, and I said, you know, I think I'm done. The students I had, they said, no, don't go. They said, we'll put up with you. I said, nah. I just said, nah, I really. And those grandkids are all over the place now, and I said. And we watch them. I mean, you know, sometimes 5 days a week, but certainly 3-4 days a week. Yeah. And Becky's, I mean, all in. And if she's all in, I'm all in.
You're all in too.
So I got tired, and I said, and I turned down my first job I've ever turned down. I might have, you know, passed a job along, but I didn't even want to do that anymore. And I just said, no, that's it. I was still with noise and so on, but I stopped. I said, well, that's it. I build a train, and the kids will have fun, and you know. And then one day, both Tim, who I didn't know, I get well, why don't you join us? I said, who's this guy? You know, I said, he seemed nice enough, and Juan knew him, you know. And I said, well, and Juan was encouraging me. He said, you got to join. And then Jeff Santella also said something online about the British group Portrait Artist of the Year and Portrait Artist of the Week. And Becky said, "Oh, go downstairs." She's trying to get rid of me. "Oh, go downstairs and paint." I said, "Well, I don't really paint anymore, you know." I went downstairs and I did. Oh, I'll show you.
Yeah.
It'll be fast.
Tim Aaron actually wanted you to talk about portrait artists.
Oh, he did.
Yeah.
Oh, well, this is well, the first ones I did, and I thought, and I loved the eyes, and I'm thinking, you know, and
Beautiful.
These are all.
So these are the sessions with the. Was this Cleveland?
No,
or this is the British.
This is a British group.
Yeah.
And as Craig was saying, if Tim wanted me to talk about it, great. But you can see no backgrounds, no nothing. But I went up. This fellow is Rankin, it's a world-renowned photographer. They would get all these. The other one was a rock artist, and they were really coming off. And I said, "Well, wait." I went upstairs. I showed Becky, check this out. She goes, "I told you could still do this." I said, "Okay." So and then I working with Tim. You know, so I finally met him, and he told me, he said, "You know, we give our sitters the paintings." I said, "You know, I was a commercial artist. We don't give things away." But then he reminded me. I said, "Well, when you taught, did you ever give the models?" I said, "Oh, I always gave the models the pictures. Kept a few."
Yeah.
I said, "Okay, give them to him." And now I said, "Have them all. I don't care anymore." And I'm not, taking away business from anyone. You know, this is our endeavor, and the models deserve to get paid.
Yeah.
In other words, but that's what kicked me off on this thing. And then a couple of friends of mine, since I started that and started with Tim, and this is three brags, but this also shows you my insanity. I've done 460.
460 since then.
Not only portraits, but other pieces, paintings like that, some of the New York things that you saw. So I went from I'm done to Bob Moyer.
To like a renaissance, like a new beginning,
Well, it's
right?
a rebirth, yeah. Bob Moyer, renowned Cleveland illustrator, the best. I mean, the very best. He once strolled into my office. He passed away a few years ago. He was working. He was in his mid-90s or early 90s. He was working on. He did one last job 2 or 3 days before he had his heart attack and died. That's what I heard from Nancy. At any rate, he came running to my office and he said, "I heard you were jogging." I said, "What?" You know, he was doing freelance work for me. So he never yelled at me. And he goes, "I heard you were driving." And he swore. And I said, "Yeah, I jogged. You know, I was doing 30, 40 miles. I was running like crazy." Juan was a runner. And he said, "My friend so-and-so dropped dead." And he said, "You know, Lou, artists," he says, "athletes, they get worse and worse as they age. You can't do it. But an artist gets better and better. Do artwork." Anyway,
we are rounding third.
Yes.
You know, we're down. I'm going to ask you a couple questions, but can I drag you in here to ask those questions?
yes.
Because we stepped in here before, and I know that you had shared a couple portraits, and we used one of these portraits, the one in the back,
Yes.
which was a self-portrait, right?
Yes. This is from Mir. So it's a reverse image of me. That's like 10 years ago. So like I said, there's a little more hair. But I did a portrait class at Orange Art and self-portrait from Mir. And it was actually Will Jean that wanted me to do it at CIA, and then CIA, the program changed. So I carried the idea over to Orange, and I said, "Well, how am I going to do that?" We had a nice big room, you know, to draw in, but what kind of mirrors? How do you do this? Well, I was at Home Depot, and they had these really cheap full length, half length mirrors, whatever, or 3/4, and I got them for $5 a piece. So I bought like over a dozen, 15, I think it was. And I talked to the director there, and I said that she wanted me to do a different class. I said, "Well, we want to try this," and so we did a workshop. And the way I did it, we set the mirrors up because you wanted a good lighting on everybody, like what's happening to you. You wanted good lighting in everybody's face. They had some track lighting, so I set up all the mirrors on the stools, which would be in front of them. I would put like like a dummy head to make sure as I was moving those. I was younger, but I could stand up on these stools, and I would move the lighting so I could get a good 3/4, and it didn't want a full face. That's blind. And our first class, we got like 12 or 14 people. I mean, it was overwhelming.
What was this from that class?
No, I decided. I said, I'm telling people how to work from a mirror, and I do have to tell you this: you can't demo with a person without having them look at the work and at what you're doing. So what I would do is take a photograph in the mirror so that they could then look at their photo and I could draw. Well, I had to prove to somebody, well, if I'm asking people to paint from a mirror, I better do one.
I better do it as well.
And so this is me from one of those mirrors. I did the same mirror. So, and this is acrylic. So, and also was a good instruction because I like to demo, but if you demoed all day long, nobody's doing any work. And so I would usually just put an overlay on somebody's work and then demo on the overlay of the acetate or whatever. And so along with demoing, I thought I better have an image of me. And so that's why I did it.
And then behind it is...
That's my father.
Your father. And to tell us about this painting of your father.
My father is the same age I am. In this portrait, we're both, I think, 63. I think that's the age. And I had to work from photo with this. You can see a difference, life to photo. You can feel more depth. Life is always better. But again, trying to leave the photo. I don't copy photos. So trying to leave the photo, I try to do the same, give you the soft edges and hard edges. So I made a diptych of the two of us, and it was going to be a triptych. My grandfather at the same age. And the only thing, I had some old black and whites with a big mustache. It was a Sicilian done, and a real tough little guy. And I never got to the last one. Maybe I still will. I'd have to work from a photo for that one, obviously. But you can see, that's not a photograph. I mean, I left the photo. When I taught, I would encourage people to always work from life. I said, but and people would bring their photos in, the loved one. I would encourage them to draw through the photo, even put an overlay on it. So draw through and around them, and the zygomatic arch, all the facets of the face, so that people, like Bridgman anatomy,
exactly.
to see not the surface of that photo, but to see an image, to make a new image, and use the photo only as a starting point. So that's what these are. We've
got like 5 minutes.
Yes.
What can you show us in 5 minutes? Because we've got photos of your grandchildren, which I know. Is this okay for me to?
Oh yeah, that'll be fine.
Just want to make sure that.
Yeah. I'll clean it up later.
Yeah.
Well.
Or do you want us to take us to another place?
No, I could if it's art you want to see.
Yeah.
This is from life. My father. This is my second year at Cooper, and actually, it's how I got into Cooper. So it was the first year. I can't remember, but you can see how big his hands were.
Yeah.
He was a Teamster, tough but real fair. I mean, everybody loved him. If you ever saw the movie Papa's Delicate Condition, that would be my father. So you could look that movie up someday. I did a lot of pen and ink.
A lot. Some
yes.
Good life drawings.
Life drawings, and I like to show them because it's such a discipline, and so I love doing those types of things. I won't bore you, but these are some of the Penton covers. This was Industry Week. Is this what you'd like to look?
Yeah.
This is Industry Week. I did that for Nick Dunkovich. It was wonderful, incredible Cleveland designer. We did a lot of three-dimensional work, carvings. This is for the old Torchlight Club downtown. So I would get these great projects. We did a lot of pro bono too. I talked to you about the food bank and the Cleveland Browns, and so we would work with them. Project Axe, worked with the schools. CIA always did portfolio reviews with them, and Cleveland State a little bit, but mostly community college. So it was nice so artists could be involved. This is a cover. So you can see very realistic. Oh, I got to do so many of the Indy 500 covers. I think this is Roger Rager, and just a lot of fun.
Oh,
I mean, so you never knew
where you're going.
if in Cleveland, for me, my thinking was if I couldn't do a lot of different things, I wouldn't make money. So I did all kinds of different things. This is more Norman Rockwell-ish, you know, and then all the way to, I think I showed you Blanda, and oh yeah. So I would try things, attempt things that were, I felt more interesting, runny stuff and so on. Oh, one fast one.
Yeah.
And it's got to be fast. I hope I find it.
And while you're looking for that, for those who share, when you share this interview, we know it, and your name will be put in a drawing next week for an original piece of artwork from Lou. That's right there, Craig. You have that that pen and ink, that gorilla. So you get a chance, if you win, to an original piece of artwork. And considering the number of gorillas that Lou has done, it's quite an impressive series.
Well, I hope they like it. I was just, it's done with pen and ink and or ballpoint. This is my final thing to talk about.
Yeah.
I needed to do, this was the Cleveland hockey team that we did the All-Star game here in Cleveland. And I had to do 40 portraits in a week. And so I just did this kind of blind contour.
Yeah.
And I got the 40 portraits done. I was exhausted. The last day they said we need 20 more because when they chose the All-Stars, some of them didn't make it and others made it. And I had to work through the night to the next day. And anyway, but you could see that styled and it did work. And anyway, so
It absolutely worked. Well, Lou, thank you so much for opening up your studio, your work, sharing your stories. What advice, as we kind of close down, what advice would you give folks on their journey? It doesn't make a difference whether their journey, you know, whether they're 20, 40, 80, you know, what's your piece of creative advice?
be aware, just pay attention to the other person. And give. And the more you give, the more you get. I mean, it just happened that way for me. And be observant and pay attention to the other person's needs, and they'll pay more attention to yours. And that includes business clients and just friends and models, anybody else that you talk to. Give more than what you get, and you'll get more than what you gave.
Sage advice,
Okay.
and I believe that too. Thank you, Craig, for the camera. Feel free to ask your questions.
Thanks,
Please share. And next week, we're going to draw the winner for the original artwork. Thank you.
Terrific.
Appreciate it.
And we chose you.
Yeah, we got it right here. Thank you so much. And we will see you guys next week.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Terrific.
What a great